Hey YouTube, how's it going? This is Krust again, and we're doing something a little bit different today. I just decided recently I found a really good deal on a brand new Super Nintendo controller from 1998, and it got some gears turning in my head. It made me wonder, well, what do modern remakes such as the Nintendo Switch Online controller or the SNES Classic Controller feel like in comparison to a brand new Super Nintendo controller? Uh, so I got on eBay. I'd been searching for one for a while just because it's so hard to find an original Super Nintendo controller in good shape. So I was looking one day and I actually found a really good deal on one. Somebody was selling one for $65, and I couldn't pass up that opportunity. So today we're going to be taking a look at this Super Nintendo controller right here and comparing it to the Nintendo Switch Online controller, a older original Super Nintendo controller, an SNES Classic controller, and an 8-bit DOE controller. So join me today as we see how these stack up to this brand new Super Nintendo controller. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. So here we have the OEM Super Nintendo controller, still brand new, still sealed. This is actually a rare sight to some degree because this is a Shop Nintendo item. So from what I can gather, Shop Nintendo was actually a website in which Nintendo would sell spare parts. I'm not sure when it was discontinued, but I do know that this website was selling SNES controllers brand new for as late as 2003, which is pretty crazy considering that the SNES was discontinued in America in 2008. So let's get this thing opened up and see how it compares to modern remakes. Already I can tell straight away that this thing is in fantastic condition. I have not seen an original SNES controller this well off in a very long time, if ever, to be honest with you. I actually got a really good deal on this thing. Somebody was selling it on eBay for $65, which, if you know anything about Super Nintendo controllers, that is a very good price for one that's brand new. Oh wow, this feels fantastic. The buttons, they all feel fresh. The D-pad is tight. So just so you know, this is a SNES 102 model, which is actually the rendition that came out with the hardware revision of the Super Nintendo in 1998. A lot of people like to call it the SNES Junior. The only thing I'm not liking is there's like this little plastic cut right here. There's excess plastic or something, but that's not a big deal at all. All of these buttons feel fantastic. So I guess the real question is, how does this compare to a more worn out original Super Nintendo controller? This is the original model. This is the SNES 102. This thing has been beaten up. It has seen some usage in its lifetime. So one of the most important things I'm noticing is old Nintendo hardware had a little like matte finish on the plastic. This thing, in its age, it's much less prominent, much less noticeable. It feels like this has been through the ringer, so to speak. On this one, it's a lot more prominent than any other Super Nintendo controller I've ever held from the original hardware. This one still feels and plays great. It's very clear that it has seen its better days. That's why I wanted this one. Let's compare it to a more modern rendition of the Super Nintendo controller. Here we have the SNES Classic Controller. it's actually very interesting that this is very different from this one. I mean, all the buttons feel great. They're all, it's a great controller. The SNES Classic Controller is. But it's very strange because that matte finish I was talking about, it is not as prominent on this as it is on this, which is very strange. It shows that there's some sort of changes they've made to the ingredients of the plastic that they use to manufacture these. This in terms of just like the face value feel of the plastic on this thing, I actually think I prefer that feel. But I mean, there's really not much difference beyond how intensely you feel the matte finish on the controllers. These buttons, yeah, I mean, they feel almost identical. So I guess the next comparison to make would be the Nintendo Switch Online controller. And so this was released, it's a Nintendo.com exclusive. These are made for the Nintendo Switch to play Nintendo Switch Online Super Nintendo games with. And I'm a big fan of these controllers. Sadly, I have stopped using it on my original Super Nintendo because it introduces a large amount of lag, which is very sad. But in comparison to this one, again, the matte finish is a lot more pronounced on these. I also have the Super Nintendo version instead of the Super Famicom. They're identical. Again, so the matte finish is a lot more pronounced on these. I actually think, I mean, there's not much difference, but the snappiness and the feel, particularly in the shoulder buttons, is actually a lot more intense on this. It goes to show that Nintendo is actually still refining the Super Nintendo controller to this day, because to some degree, I do actually prefer the feel of this one. I wish that I could get like a real Super Nintendo controller with the wire made completely with the components used for these. It's fantastic. But again, this is a great controller. Like the margin of improvement on this is, it's only like 2%. Realistically, it does not make much of a difference. This feels fantastic, and I am actually very glad to have it in my collection. The last comparison I want to make is with the 8BitDo gamepad. These were released a few years ago. It is the only one-to-one recreation of a Super Nintendo controller that they've made. It's the SNES 30. I'm gonna be straight up about this. This thing, in my opinion, is garbage. I mean, once you start using even just the Switch Online controllers, it becomes clear that this thing is not that great. Now, I mean, for most people, they probably wouldn't notice, but for me, these D-pads are way too sensitive to diagonals. Not to mention that, same with this, both of these controllers introduce a very noticeable amount of input lag when playing on a real Super Nintendo. It's actually very frustrating. But in terms of comparison of the feel, it's a night and day difference. This plastic feels substantially cheaper. I mean, I'm not trying to knock 8BitDo, because they do make quality controllers, and I know for a lot of people that this is great. I actually use it a lot on my PC, but there's so much that could be done better. I mean, this shoulder button feels unresponsive. Again, the quality of the plastic could be a lot better. The D-pad's way too sensitive to diagonals. It just, in comparison, this just feels like a very high quality knockoff, especially compared to this controller. So I have to say, I learned that there's more difference between these than you would think. I was actually expecting the plastic on the new SNES controller to feel better than this, or even the Super Nintendo Classic Controller. But no, they've refined the ingredients for this type of plastic. I'm actually very shocked by how different it is. But overall, the modern attempts at remaking the Super Nintendo controller are actually very good, and in some respects better. Very, very interesting. Something that I was very curious to see when I ordered this. So anyways, thank you for watching, and have a great day.